I'm Veronica Marshall at the Capitol. This week on Senate Spotlight, the 94th legislature has come to an end, which begs the question, how did we do?
Minnesotans are really paying a price with their pocketbooks and with their sense of safety and security, and we knew we needed to move a powerful agenda, and we did.
People across the state have been talking about the issues with fraud and where their taxpayer dollars are going. And it was up to us to address those issues. And so I think we did in a big way here.
Senate leadership shares their thoughts on the session's progress and the problems they hope to solve next session.
What we want to do is make sure that the kids are in the best possible situation to be learning. And that's something we have to focus on as a state.
We were left in a place of having to try and figure out how to put together a negotiation with a partner that was just bringing nothing at all.
That's all coming up.
Senate Spotlight is produced by the Minnesota Senate and Senate Media Services.
The end of the 94th legislature signifies the start of election season. And while you may question the power of a single vote or voter, senators know all too well how valuable one vote can be. This session, Senate Democrats had a one-seat advantage in the chamber. The tie-breaking vote allowed the DFL caucus to advance several of its priorities off the floor. Majority Leader Erin Murphy talks about her caucus's successes this session and the work that still needs to be done. Senator, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So this was a short session, but your caucus got a lot done. You passed several, high-profile legislative packages off the Senate floor, like emergency rental assistance, immigration enforcement, stabilizing HCMC, and gun violence prevention measures. Even saying it is a lot. To you, what were the big successes of the session?
When we started this session in February, the common theme was nothing was going to get done. We had a divided legislature, it's an election year, and a lot of people thought we would really literally get nothing done. But we are responding to a moment in Minnesota, and Minnesotans are really paying a price with their pocketbooks and with their sense of safety and security, and we knew we needed to move a powerful agenda, and we did. That's the success of this story. There are lots of things that we've accomplished, and I can't wait to talk to you about them. But the Senate DFL was determined, despite some of the behavior in the House and not getting bills put together or committees just not really getting anything done, we were determined to serve the people of Minnesota, and we've done that.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Another success of the session was passing a bonding bill. It took negotiation, but were you satisfied with what got done?
I'm really, really happy that we put together an agreement that moves a $1.2 billion infrastructure bill where we are investing in water and roads and bridges in local communities across the state. The backlog of projects is significant, and we're not meeting that backlog, not significantly, but we're doing a lot of work for the people of Minnesota when our economy is flagging a little bit because of everything that is happening in Washington, D.C. One thing that I was disappointed about is we didn't put enough money into lead pipes. It's something the Senate Democrats fought for all the way through. We need to replace lead pipes across the state of Minnesota. We were able to get $15 million in, but it's not nearly what we need in an ongoing amount of money to do that job. So that part is frustrating to me. I wish we could get to that negotiation a little earlier. Often people in the minority think they want to wait until the last minute to use the maximum leverage that they have. And that results then in a quickly put together bonding bill. But gratefully, Sandy Pappas and others had been working all session, so they were able to accomplish that.
Well, to the point of using the bonding bill as a bargaining chip, Senate Republicans were able to get one of their priorities in response to getting the bonding bill out the door, and that was lowering vehicle tab fees. What were your thoughts on that?
We are very focused on making sure life is affordable. We want to get a fair deal to the people of Minnesota, and they're really paying for it right now at the pump. Gas prices are higher than I can ever remember. We could do a gas price holiday, but I don't think that would actually work very well because we can't regulate that market. But we could do this and take a little pressure off of people's transportation costs at home. One thing that I found bewildering and frustrating is we learned that this could be implemented as early as October of this year. And that was our position. If we're going to do this, let's do it as swiftly as we can and get the money into people's hands. But our Republican colleagues across the aisle wanted to wait until January, and I'm not sure why they wanted to do that, but they did and insisted. So this will come a little later. We would have been happy to do it sooner.
Something else that happened this session is that a lot of the work was in response to federal actions. And you said because of that, a lot of things got left behind. Take me through some of the things that you wished, had been gotten to this session.
One of the things that we did in the Minnesota Senate, and we did it early, was introduce and move a package of small business relief that was in response to Metro Surge. Senator Champion did a phenomenal job on that proposal. As forgivable loans all across the state of Minnesota for people who had experienced impacts. But we could not get our House counterparts, especially the Republicans, to agree to that. That is a big frustration for me. We, the Senate, had a very strong position on our response to the federal budget bill. We often call it H.R. 1. When we think about Medicaid and SNAP, we did a lot of work to try and protect those programs through this next year and a half or two as we move through the implementation of those laws. So I feel like the Senate came to this session, the Senate Democrats, ready to work. To respond to what we've experienced and put forth a strong budget and proposals to meet the moment, and much of that became law.
Given that the state has a relationship with the federal government, we rely on them for lots of things. How has this session's actions impacted that relationship moving forward?
The current administration, the Trump administration, has been very, very hard on states in terms of funding and the commitment that the longstanding partnership that we've had. So you think about what they're doing with Medicaid, with SNAP, with unfunded mandates to our counties, and the largest tax cut that is going to benefit the wealthiest Americans first. There's a lot to be concerned about over the next decade because of that action that was taken. It has really harmed, I think, the relationship. And I never imagined in my tenure that I would be thinking about states' rights and our autonomy to make decisions for our people, but this administration is eroding that. This administration is eroding the relationship between itself and the Congress is rolling over and allowing it to happen. So the states have got to fight. The states have got to stand up and stick up for their people and for our ability to lead and govern for the state of Minnesota.
You mentioned relationships. Let's talk about the relationships closer to home. We started this session talking about bipartisanship, and there were great wins there this session with the creation of the Independent Office of the Inspector General, and there was a consumer protection package for homeowners associations. But there were also a lot of straight party line votes. What's your reaction to that?
We came into this session to serve the people of Minnesota, first and foremost, and get work done. That higher order than bipartisanship, if you will. It's a really important, and I think in this divided legislature, you've got to earn the votes of members of the House and the Senate, so by its nature, we're going to end up with a lot of compromises. But there were things that we needed to get done, and I think the response to Metro Surge and the powerful package that we put together on gun violence prevention is a really core example of when the demand for bipartisanship doesn't necessarily meet the needs of the people of Minnesota. So I think it's important for us to act on their behalf and earn the votes along the way. That's the work that we do. But I think the House Republicans in particular were very clear after the Annunciation shooting that they were going to do nothing around the issue of harm reduction and banning weapons of war.
Well, speaking of House Republicans, it seemed like the Senate really had to wait for them a lot this session. You said it was frustrating, and there were moments where your caucus called out the House GOP specifically, like voting on affordability and those gun violence prevention measures. Is there a way around that, or is it just how the system works?
Oh, no, I don't think this is how the system is meant to work. I think the tie in the House, which was delivered by the voters, so I respect that, has become perhaps a blanket over the disagreements that rest underneath that. And when committee chairs, committee leads can't come up with anything that they agree on, so they do no work, that is a real disservice to the people of Minnesota. And it was hard for us to line up the Senate work because we moved things in every one of our committees and brought that to a negotiation with the House. But there were significant pieces of the work that we brought that had no counterpart. There was nothing there to meet up with. and we were left in a place of having to try and figure out how to put together a negotiation with a partner that was just bringing nothing at all. That's frustrating, but that's not how the system is meant to work, not in our two-chamber system.
Would you say that that gridlock caused so many of those bills to seemingly cross the finish line in those last few minutes of session?
I think it is important to remember that legislation is meant to go slowly and it's meant to be methodical. So the things that we passed, from my perspective where I sit in the Senate, were things that were heard through many committee hearings over the course of the session. That's the way it's supposed to be. Hear the bills, hear the proposals in the various committees. They come to the floor, we take a vote, and we take that into a negotiation. When you don't have a partner in the other chamber that is doing that, it makes things seem unbalanced. But in the Senate, what we moved on that last day was the fruit of the work that we've done all session.
There was criticism on the floor that some of those quick turnarounds on those last few days of session didn't allow members to fully review that material. Do you think those concerns are valid?
I think that, again, I will say we moved things through in a very methodical way. So when you think about a tax bill, and we had a tax bill that had come out of committee, and it was there for everybody to see. We've got to do our homework, right? If we wait until something comes to the floor and we haven't done our homework to understand what's there, that's a problem for individual members, but not necessarily a systemic problem.
You've also said that the system is broken in regards to how those end of session deals are made. Tell me more about that.
I think in the last 8 to 10 years, we have relied way too much on a negotiation that happens in a cabinet room and not in the conference committees. And I, as a creature of this place before I ever ran for office, and understand the value of a public conference committee with subject matter experts that are negotiating the final efforts by the legislature. We've got to move back in that direction. Too much is happening behind closed doors, and I don't like that. That's broken.
Elections are coming, so do you think there's an opportunity to change this for next session?
I do.
Okay, so the work is over for now because session is over, but then again, is it ever really over? We know that certain items will be progressing during the interim. Can you talk to me about some of those?
I'm already starting to think about both procedural rules changes that I'm interested in, but also the policy that we need to think about, especially around healthcare. We were able to stabilize HCMC, one of the most important pieces of work that we have done this session. It is a statewide asset. If you're in a traumatic accident or in a terrible fire, you're going to get your care at HCMC. Doesn't matter where you live. We need to preserve it, and we took a really big step in stabilizing it, along with rural hospitals that are also in distress because of the federal action last July. We have got to come up with a new mechanism or new means to make sure our hospitals stay open across the state of Minnesota. The federal government and the Congress took away a lot of those tools when they passed that bill last July. And send so much money to the wealthiest Americans. We've got a really difficult job in front of us, and that'll be part of the summer's work.
Well, as we mentioned, election season is upon us.
Yeah.
So are you excited? How are you feeling about that?
I'm very excited about election season. It always feels like a fresh start. It's a new opportunity, and Minnesotans get to tell us the direction they want us to go with their votes. So I'm ready for it.
Okay, Senator, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Senate Republicans were in the minority this session, which meant its members needed to focus on cooperation and negotiation with their DFL colleagues to pass their priorities. To that end, Minority Leader Mark Johnson says while there were bipartisan wins this session, there's still room for improvement. Senator, welcome back.
It's wonderful to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely. I am happy to catch you now that session is over before you head home for the interim. So let's talk about the session and let's talk about the wins first. There were several big bipartisan wins this session, particularly the creation of the Independent Office of the Inspector General. Not only was that bipartisan, but it was one of your caucus's high priority items this session, which was combating fraud. So tell me more about that.
Yeah, so the OIG bill that passed was a bipartisan win, both in the House and the Senate. We passed it last year off the floor and did a lot of work in the interim, and then this session again on making sure that it passed over in the House. It was a good bill that, people across the state have been talking about the issues with fraud and where their taxpayer dollars are going. and it was up to us to address those issues. And so I think we did in a big way here. Not only the OIG bill, but there was a number of bills that passed, and we used a lot of our leverage in the minority to get a lot of those at the very end of session done. So we're very proud of that and want to see that work done now. We've passed the bills, now the hard work comes into play of actually putting those into effect.
Yeah, I know another one that passed that was courtesy of your caucus was the Take It Back Act, which makes total sense when you think about it.
Yeah, that's one that Senator Steve Drazkowski, did a lot of work on and got that through at the end. And so, he is one that has been very much a hawk on fiscal responsibility and growth of government, things like that. And this was one that just made sense, where you're going to tax any sort of proceeds that a fraudster might be benefiting from to 100%, so that they never benefit from the proceeds that they have stolen from Minnesota taxpayers.
Glad to see these things going into effect. Now, we did have some fraud protections already in place, and they could use some refinement because we heard stories of legitimate service providers getting caught up in investigations, which was impacting Minnesotans with disabilities, causing them to lose their services either temporarily or for the foreseeable future. So have some of those issues been corrected, or is that still work to be done?
Yeah, and that's an issue that, as we pointed out, the fraud was occurring for the last 8 years. The governor's office and the administration was very slow at addressing those issues. Then when it became a national headline, he came down very heavy-handed on our agencies and the service providers underneath them in a way that didn't make any sense, where it cut off legitimate services and it also cut off the fraudulent ones as well too. So what we've done is put together a package here that is more even-handed, that allows those who are operating in good faith and providing the services to Minnesotans to continue providing those. But it'll help to address the fraudsters and cut off the payments to those.
Excellent. No more catching dolphins in the tuna net, as Senator Abler would say. You guys had another bipartisan win this session, which was the Consumer Protection Bill, which added protections for people living in homeowners associations and common interest communities. So talk to me about what these bipartisan wins mean for your caucus.
Well, that's one that Senator Eric Lucero worked very hard on over the last 2 years. And that we've all seen the videos of the overzealous homeowners association coming after folks for different items. Maybe ticky-tack sort of follows on their property. This allows homeowners to have more protection, more ability to enforce their property rights on their own property without taking away from the full community. So this had buy-in across the spectrum, from property owners to attorney groups to homeowners associations, in a way that made sense. So he put a lot of work in this, and I think at the end we came up with a really good bipartisan bill that people were pretty proud to vote for.
And when we see senators working together across the aisle, what does that mean for the Senate and Minnesota as a whole, like when we see this happen?
Yeah, it's taken 4 years to get to this point where we have really good working relationships. So it's sad to see so many retirements here in the Senate. I think we have something like 17 retirements coming up in the Senate. We just got done with the retirement speeches, and these are long-time members. I think overall the combined years of service was 262 out of those members that had retired. So we're going to miss that, and we're going to get a new group of people in this November. But again, it's a process of the institution to get folks in and build up those relationships and start building trust so that we can work across the aisle again.
And during those retirement speeches, I heard repeated over and over the need for bipartisanship and the hope of working together more in the future. So, your members that are staying on heard that, so maybe that will continue.
Well, I certainly hope so. That's a big goal for us and for the other side as well too. And one thing that I was pretty proud of too is Senator Murphy and myself do a Wednesday morning walk and just try to keep up to date on what's happening in the caucuses, how can we help out, and that relationship with Leader Murphy has been really good, and I think it's been growing over the last 4 years, and looking forward to continuing that going forward.
Plus, you can never be mad about getting your steps in. Another focus of your caucus this session was to improve affordability across the state, and that was through tax relief. You guys saw one of those efforts across the finish line, which was reducing tab fees, and that came about negotiation. So talk to me about that process.
So when you go to the grocery store or you go to the gas station, you will hear repeatedly from people that approach you, you know, man, we are paying so much in this state. I just put tabs on my vehicle and it was $1,000 or $1,500. And so we've heard this over and over again. And one of the things we were able to do at the end of session was leverage the bonding bill to reduce those tab fees. It's just a one-year reduction, but even that's $254 million. And that's $254 million. It's going to stay in Minnesota taxpayers' pocketbooks. And that's really important to us because that's what we hear all the time from those folks. So we were able to do that and provide a bonding bill of $1.2 billion to invest in our communities. It was a win-win situation, and it didn't take any money away from our roads, our bridges, and that infrastructure. That 252 came right off the bottom line in a way that's money well spent when it's going back to Minnesota taxpayers.
Was the legislature able to move forward with any other affordability measures this session?
You know, there are a number of things that we tried to get across, a number of tax breaks and different things. There was pass-through entity tax, there was some 179, which are all business related sort of taxes. There's also some property tax relief within that package that we're able to get across the finish line as well too. That, you know, that's another one that Minnesotans are feeling the pain on. And this is an ability to get money back to Minnesota taxpayers. So a few items we're excited about, but there's a lot more work that we should be doing.
Okay. There were successful bipartisan bills, as we've talked about, but there were also many party line votes on high-profile packages like gun violence prevention and immigration enforcement. So what are you thinking when those moments are unfolding?
Yeah, you know, those are some that we really struggled with as we're going through the legislation on that. And at the end, there just wasn't the votes in both bodies to pass some of those things. There was some great packages. If you took out the controversial pieces that dealt with mental health, that dealt with community safety, that dealt with investments for our schools and our communities, that increased the safety. Those are things that bipartisanly we could get across the aisle or across the finish line really, really well. But then there's always these political points that people are trying to score within the bills that really create a toxic bill for the parties. So there was a lot of letdowns that way, but again, as we were developing that legislation, we saw a lot of opportunities that some we passed, some weren't able to get done, but we'll keep working on that in the years to come.
Okay. You said the session would have played out differently if your caucus had been in the majority. So tell me about some of that. What would we have seen?
Absolutely. So our focus as Republicans in the Senate is the taxpayers, is the citizens of Minnesota. And so how can we make sure that we're making life better, easier for them? Making sure that our schools are the top in the nation, making sure that our infrastructure is the best that it can possibly be, making sure that our communities are safe for families, and making sure that our business community can thrive here. And what we've seen continually over the last 4 years is Democrats putting their effort into the government. How can we grow government? How can we do labor negotiations at the state capitol? How can we, you know, just strengthen these institutions, not the individuals? And that's really just misplaced priorities, and we're paying the price for that right now. Our schools are testing at below the national average. We're lower than Mississippi. We're lower than some of these states when you think of low education scores. Now we're there. Now this is really just such a shame for Minnesotans and something that we should be reversing. That's what we want to do.
I heard a lot of talk about our education standards and scores during those retirement speeches as well, so it really seems to have been a focus towards the end of the session. Do you think that that's something that will come up next session?
It better. That's something that we need to focus on as a state. That's something where right now the Democrats have been very focused on mandates, on just very descriptive learning platforms and things like that. What we want to do is make sure that the kids are in the best possible situation to be learning. And that's something we have to focus on as a state.
Senator, there were wins this session. There were maybe some more difficult moments on the floor, but ultimately, do you think it was successful?
From my perspective, I think it was a 50-50. There was some wins that were in there, some things that we were proud of. But then there was a lot of things that I think we really missed the ball on tax relief, on education, on just making sure that this state is in better shape at the end of the day. But it's 50-50, and hopefully when we get back to it next year, it's a budget year and a chance to do some great things.
We can improve those odds.
Amen.
What has been your main takeaway or your greatest lesson learned this session?
This session, it is about just relationships, making sure that you're working together, trying to understand the other side. I think we all saw that when the House was tied as it was. Well, what does the other side need to get this bill passed? What is a Republican? What is a Democrat? And trying to understand that. I think we made some big strides this year in that, and ended up really starting to understand each other better.
If you had a favorite moment, what was it? I liked Senator Duckworth's President Bush impersonation, personally.
That is a highlight, isn't it, of the year? One of the highlights I have is in the spring when finally the grass is greened up and we're kind of in this end of session, start and stop. I took my chief of staff out, Jason Fossum. We always go out and play catch for a little bit between meetings, and so that's a memory that I'm going to retain for quite some time.
All right. We will see new faces in the chamber next session from both caucuses. What do you want these new members, the incoming freshmen, to know before they start?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing them. I mean, it's such a great experience to be in the Minnesota Senate. Very few people have had that opportunity to be a member there, and so just to make sure that they understand what you're coming here to do, and it's to serve the people of the state. Some people don't realize that until a few years into their time here at the Senate, but to really focus on those individuals, their needs, your communities, and represent them well at the Senate. And it's about relationships, and not to aggrandize oneself, but to really focus on the needs of others around you. And so that's a big lesson that I think some need to learn, some pick it up quick, and some take some time.
Well, it's a good thing that you have you there to help lead the way. All right, Senator, thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. How do you feel about the Senate's 2026 legislative session? Do you think senators navigated the moment to the best of their abilities, or do you wish they had accomplished more? Let us know how you feel by joining the conversation. Leave a comment on our social media pages. That's at MN Senate on Facebook and MN Senate on Instagram as well. And if you missed some of the legislative action during the session but want to catch up now, you can head to our YouTube page at MN Senate Media, where you can watch all of the Senate's committee hearings and press conferences from the session. All of the Senate's seats are on the ballot this November, and now those looking to fill those seats can officially apply to become a candidate. The Secretary of State's filing period is now open through Tuesday, June 2nd. If you'd like to see who has already announced their intention to run to represent you, all you have to do is head online. Visit candidates.sos.mn.gov, and you can search by a candidate's name to see if your favorite has already filed, or you can see who is running in all of the state's Senate races. The page will show you what party the candidate belongs to, and it also lists their campaign website, so you can see where the candidates stand on the issues that matter to you. If there's more than one candidate from the same caucus running in the same race, that means there will be a primary election, so keep an eye out. That's all the time we have today. Thank you for joining us, and see you next time.